Good morning and welcome to this end of summer celebration. We're right in this period of time when we're moving between the rhythm of the summer into the rhythm of the fall, and I don't think it even matters so much whether you have school-age kids or if you're in school yourself. There's just something that happens here at the end of August and early September that you can just feel that kind of shift. And so this morning, as we celebrate the end of the summer, we're going to be looking a little bit at what are some of the things that happen in summertime, and then what are some of the things that we're looking forward to in the fall. Sounds like my mic is just a little hot. So I hope you don't mind, but I trolled Facebook a little bit to see where y'all were this summer. And I brought a few photos. So Anna's Cucalan, I think at this very minute, is walking the Camino in Spain. And the Wrights were at the Gay Pride Parade earlier in the summer. This is a photograph from Provincetown where Betsy York spent some time. Emma Fuji was on a bicycling trip. The Hellisons were in several spots in New England. This is the Laneo Thompson crowd enjoying some time, it looks like maybe in their backyard. Nan Alexander went to Ireland. Charla and Nate at the beach somewhere, I'm not quite sure which beach that is. And the Stamball crowd, they were at Santa Cruz with some of their friends. And the Wands Bourgeoisos were in the Alps. So we've been around this summer, and this is only just a few of you. All of you who aren't on Facebook, you'll have to tell your friends where you went. But as we gather this morning at this time, both a reflection of what it means to have time off, to be on vacation, to retreat, and then to look forward to a time when we're moving into greater activity. We gather as community in God's presence and in God's love. Will you stand as you're able, and let's sing together. Seated. As we gather our thoughts and our spirit and our minds and our hearts, bringing it all together in this place, in this time, we enter into a time of prayer. We call ourselves to presence. We call ourselves to being here fully, to bring our full selves to this time. And it doesn't have to be work, it can be an act of relaxation, of being able to let go of control rather than holding on to it, of being able to release into God's spirit and God's heart. I know that as we gather on any Sunday morning, there are people and places and situations that are on our minds. And I just invite you to call out randomly. We don't even need to take turns in this. People that are on your hearts and minds, just anything that you're praying for this morning. Can you just call those things out? We hold all these people and places and situations that we've named, the ones that are on our hearts that can't even be brought to words, as we enter into a time of prayer through music.
Somebody's praying, I can feel it. Somebody's praying for me. Mighty hands are guiding me to protect me from what I can't see. Lord, I believe. Lord, I believe. Somebody's praying for me. Angels are watching, I can feel it. Angels are watching over me. There's many miles ahead till I get home. Still I'm safely kept before your throne. Lord, I believe. Lord, I believe. Your angels are watching over me. Well, I've walked the barren wilderness where my pillow was a stone. And I've been through the darkest caverns where no light had ever shone. Still I walked on, 'cause there was someone who was down on their knees. And Lord, I thank you for those people praying all this time for me. Somebody's praying, I can feel it. Somebody's praying for me. Mighty hands are guiding me to protect me from what I can't see. Lord, I believe. Lord, I believe. Somebody's praying for me. Somebody's praying for me.
And we gather all of our prayers in these words that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
I'd like to invite all the children to come join James and I up here on the steps and bring your backpacks or your bags if you brought them. Because today is our day where we bless our backpacks. Hi, everybody. Are you all ready for school? Who's started? My microphone is a little bit hot. I think that's the word Phil used today, too. Who started school already? Yeah? Who hasn't quite started yet? Yeah? Oh my gosh, so good to see all you all. And so, do you all bring a backpack or a bag to school every day? Yeah? What kinds of things do you carry in the bag with you? Come on up, Bree. You want to sit there? Yeah, Luca. Lunchbox. What else? Water bottle. Crayons. Yeah. What about over here? What do y'all bring? Binder. School supplies. Paper. Yeah, Abraham. Books. Those are all good things. Wow, did they get heavy with all that stuff? It's really light because school hasn't quite started yet. Yeah. Wait. What? A binder. What are some other, so those are all things that we need to make it through our school day. What are some other things that we need to make it through our school day that maybe don't quite fit in the backpack, or maybe they're not something we can hold in our hands, but we need to bring with us, or we need to have in order to make it through the day? Can you think of what those things are? Brains. That would be good. Sometimes I come to work without mine. Yeah, what else? Second. Positive attitude, definitely. What else? A good breakfast, that helps me. I wonder what else we might think of that we need to take with us. And sometimes if we think about those things, they can be a hope or a prayer or a wish or sometimes a blessing, like something to remind us that we have what we need with us when we go, even if we can't actually see it in our backpack. That maybe when we open it up, if we know that we have a blessing with us, we can see that there's a blessing for a positive attitude in there, a blessing for brains, a blessing for other things we might need. And James has a little song to help us think through what are those kinds of the blessings that we can ask from God and from each other and give to one another for our backpacks.
So everybody have your backpack or maybe an imaginary one and maybe take it off and like you're going to give it a hug, okay?
Oh, yeah.
That's one way we can bless something, is giving it a hug. So listen to this and see if you can join me. I send a blessing to my backpack today. May it be filled with lots of, what do you think? Hay? Hay. I'll go with that. Lots of horses would go with that. Try that with me. I send a blessing to my backpack today. May it be filled with lots of hay. What else could your backpack be filled with? Yes. What's that? Markers. I send a blessing to my backpack today. May it be filled with lots of markers. One more. Yes, yes. Folders. Here we go. I send a blessing to my backpack today. May it be filled with lots of folders. And let's give our backpack a hug and sing, may it be filled with lots of love. May it be filled with lots of love. So hold your backpack in your arms as if it's one of your closest loved ones. And we'll say a little prayer. And maybe you can just say it after me. Great God.
Great God.
Fill my backpack.
Fill my backpack.
Fill my heart.
Fill my heart.
Fill my life
Fill my life
with what I need
with what I need
to fill others
to fill others
with your love.
with your love.
Amen.
Amen. And as you all continue to worship in Sunday school, I invite us all to rise and share a sign of peace and love with each other. The peace of Christ be with you all. Good morning and welcome again to worship here at First Congregational Church of Berkeley United Church of Christ. We're so glad that you all are with us for this end of summer celebration. I'd like to say a special welcome to those of you who are with us for the first time today. We're so glad you chose to be here to worship God in community and I hope you feel really at home here with us today. Phil Porter, who's offering our preaching time this morning, will be at the door following worship to greet you personally. And if you're visiting, if you'd like to provide your information on the friendship pads, we'd love to send you a note this week to tell you how glad we were that you were with us. And speaking of the friendship pads, if you're sitting in the middle aisle, if you could grab those and sign in and pass that down your row and take note of the names of the people sitting with you so you can greet them by name later in the service. The staff and ministers appreciate the opportunity to pray with you during the week. So if you let us know what's on your hearts, you can do that by filling out the prayer card in the pew rack in front of you and dropping it in the offering plate later on in worship. We celebrate communion every Sunday, and this morning, the Reverend Elaine Lyford Najima will offer communion here on the chancel steps to anyone who is interested in taking communion immediately following worship. Join us after worship today for our Justice and Service Fair. You may have seen, if you came in through our other building, there's set up for 21 organizations, local and international, with ties to First Church, and they are there to share what they do, invite folks to find out more about them. Volunteer opportunities abound, and some of those people are here worshiping with us today, and we're so glad that you are here with us in worship and following worship, and we look forward to celebrating all the ways to show our commitment to justice in the world by engaging with those organizations following worship. And also, if you love ice cream, there's going to be ice cream and other yummy treats out there, and a bounce house that will be inflated immediately following worship. So let us continue our celebration together in our fellowship time. Invite you all to register for our annual church retreat at Camp Cazadero today following worship. You can look for Emma, who will be also in the Justice and Service Fair. You can sign up and find out more about Camp Caz with her. And that's happening September 19th and 20th. Join us this Wednesday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. for the launch party for our very first open chapel, which is a new thing created by and for young adults. This progressive Christian service is open to all young adults, loosely defined, and will take place every first and third Wednesday in Loper Chapel at 7 p.m. And you can talk to Kit if you have questions about that. We return to our 2 worship service schedule on Sunday, September 13th, 9 a.m. in the large assembly, 11 a.m. here in the sanctuary. And our fall Sunday school program also begins on September 13th during our 11 a.m. hour. Our new member class happens on September 13th as well, with joining Sunday on September 27th. And you can talk with Kathy Hellison if you have any questions, thanks Kath, about that. Next Sunday, September 6th, is our last single worship service at 10 a.m., and we'll be here in the sanctuary, and we'll be wrapping up our summer series on telling true stories, reclaiming the sacred art of testimony by hearing from several of you. So that will be a really great and powerful time. I encourage you all to come. I invite you now into prayer for members of our community. Prayers for Janelle Lucas and her family in the death of Janelle's sister Suzanne McDermott this past Monday, August 24th. Continued prayers for Karen, Neil, and Marie Claire Smith as Marie Claire continues to recover from pancreatitis at Alta Bates Hospital. And then we also continue to hold Joy Apra and Jeanette Snyder in our hearts and prayers as they remain in hospice. May God continue to be with these dear ones and those who you carry in your hearts.
Join me.
I don't know. I thought they might have planned something.
In the book of Mark, it says, as soon as the meal was finished, Jesus insisted that the disciples get in the boat and go on ahead across to Bethsaida while he dismissed the congregation. After sending them off, he climbed a mountain to pray. There are lots of moments in Jesus' ministry where he had to get away. You could see the kind of rhythm moving back and forth between the intensity of the teaching and the healing that he was doing, and then also finding time to be by himself, to go up on the mountain to pray, to be alone, to get himself centered, to bring himself close to God. And there's something about summer and the opportunities for shifting our patterns, being other places, that also allow us that kind of refreshment. So this morning, the three of us are going to tell you a little bit about what we learned on our summer vacations. The truth is, for me, that I don't exactly vacation. Actually, most of the traveling that I do is related to my work, which actually has a lot of playing in it. So you could look at it from the other point of view, which is that I'm always vacationing. But it does take me to other places, and 2 times this summer I had trips that took me close enough to the Midwest that I was able to go back to Bloomington, Indiana, where I grew up. This last trip, I was there just a week and a half or so ago, and I was staying with my brother and sister-in-law who lived just a little bit outside of Bloomington. So as I was driving back and forth doing the various things that I was doing, I was often making this trip from Bloomington to this slightly farther out little spot, 10 or 15 minutes away from the edge of Bloomington. So kind of a windy road going up and down through these soft hills that are characteristic of southern Indiana. And there was one point in particular where it was early evening. The sun was low in the sky was beautiful and blue, and this golden light was suffusing the entire landscape, and it's so green. And I realized how rare it is that I'm actually on a kind of a small winding road going through the middle of mostly green, uninterrupted by too many tall buildings. I spent a lot of time on the grid, and I just noticed in that particular time how different it was to be in that kind of landscape. And I've noticed several times in my life, returning to Indiana, and not just southern Indiana where I grew up, but northern Indiana where my grandparents were, that when I'm in those landscapes, I can feel that in my body in a completely different way than I experience, for example, the landscape of California, where I've been for a long time, but I didn't grow up here. So I find this area beautiful, but there's a kind of resonance in that geography that I experience when I'm in southern Indiana that speaks not just to kind of the aesthetics of the beauty of the place, but also that deeper sense of belonging and being home.
I think what I learned on my summer vacation, I got to spend a lot of time outside this summer, which was great. And as I was trying to boil it down to a simple statement, I think that what I learned was sometimes the most appropriate response to the awesomeness of God or the awesomeness of a moment is just to be silent and take it in. So part of what I did on vacation was I went up to the North Coast. I'd never really been up there, even though I've lived in California for, 12, 15 years or so now. I've never been up to Mendocino, to Fort Bragg, to that area. So I spent a few days up there, and I was with a friend, and we were driving along, and we kept pulling over at the stops along Highway 1, and we'd get out of the car, and I'd go out, and I would just gasp, and I would say, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. And it was one of those weeks where it wasn't foggy at all. It was beautiful, and the blues were just incredibly vibrant, and there were birds, and the seals, and just all of the sensations. And I kept taking out my iPhone, right, and taking all these pictures. So we'd get back to the place we were staying at night, and I'd look at all the pictures, and I'd think, gosh, these all look exactly the same. They just are amazing, and I'd want to post them on my Facebook, and I was just like, okay, this just looks like I was in the same place taking the same picture. And I don't know, by the third day, where I realized that I was coming short of words that were synonyms to amazing and incredible and beautiful and awesome, I just stopped taking out my phone. I stopped trying to say anything at all, and I just took it in and tried to really just be there in that present moment and realize there were no words to capture how beautiful God's creation is, how incredibly privileged I felt to have the time and the ability to take time to be there, and to really try to just soak it into my body and not try to do anything with it, to tell anybody about it, to post it anywhere, to take it off into some meaningful way, to make a sermon about it necessarily, but just to let it be and to say thank you.
What I learned on my summer vacation. About a week before I went back to New England to see my family, I lost my watch. And so I kind of took that as a sign or maybe an invitation to enter into an alternate relationship with time. I think going back, like Phil was saying, to your hometown, your home place, your home people can sometimes feel a bit like time travel anyway. And I found myself dipping into old rhythms of time, old rhythms of behavior, even, adolescent behaviors with parents, things like the inescapable too, but also the beautiful, the astounding lunch with my best friend from childhood, who I met, of all places, in church, who can still make me laugh in the same inexplicable way. I accidentally found myself on an archaeological dig in my parents' basement. We're in the midst of old, dried-up lip smackers and dance team ribbons and old, worn-out shoes. I found myself digging into layers of time, reconnecting with memories as they flooded back that I had completely forgotten. And I found myself aware of the cyclical nature of time in a different way, that when I'm constantly rushing to appointments and determined by a schedule, you just don't enter into. I found myself scooping up my newly long-limbed nieces and nephews, and suddenly I was the one telling the children how much they've grown. Time was so cyclical, isn't it? I had dinner with my 92-year-old grandfather and got to meet his new girlfriend. And watched them smile at each other across the table like teenagers. Time is so cyclical. And I found myself, when I could let go of trying to grasp onto, like what Rachel was saying, trying to get the picture or capture the moment, that sense of time slipping by like sand in an hourglass, when I could loosen my grip a little and sink into deep Sabbath time, I felt what Abraham Joshua Heschel calls the sanctuary in time of Sabbath. Sabbath as a sanctuary in time, a holy space carved out, both separate, timeless, some taste of the eternal, and also somehow in time. And so when the vacation came to an end, I found myself gripping again in that homesick feeling of right before the first day of school, where you can't believe, where did the time go? And then, it sounds cliche, but why do we all take pictures of the sunset on vacation? There's this incredible beauty that is crystallized, and then you turn away and it's gone. There's something about the compression of time that lets us enter into the expansiveness of the eternal. Amen.
this story from the book of Luke. Every year, Jesus' parents traveled to Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up as they always did for the feast. When it was over and they left for home, the child Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents didn't know it. Thinking he was somewhere in the company of pilgrims, they journeyed for a whole day and they began looking for him among relatives and neighbors. When they didn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem looking for him. The next day, they found him in the temple, seated among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. The teachers were all quite taken with him, impressed with the sharpness of his answers. Teaching was such an important part also of Jesus' ministry, and education, I think, has such a high value in this congregation. In this time when we're shifting into this September through whatever May phase, which often feels like a time of increased attention to learning and growing, we wanted to reflect a little bit on some of the people that had an influence on us as we think about who has been important to us in our own lives as teachers and leaders, to see how people like that have changed our lives, and to have you reflect a little bit for yourself about people in your own life, educators who have changed you.
I've had a lot of great teachers in my life, but Miss Judy Shannon, who taught 3rd grade at Honeywell School, was destined to be my favorite teacher. She was already the favorite teacher of 2 out of 3 of my older brothers who'd had her. In fact, I think she was everyone's favorite teacher at Honeywell School, but it didn't make it any less special. She went by Miss Judy Shannon. Miss Shannon, we called her, but on all our homework assignments and worksheets, she signed it MJS, Miss Judy Shannon, sometimes with a smile or a heart. Miss Judy Shannon made you feel good. She was irreverent and a little madcap. She used to tell us all that she looked really good for over 100. When, in retrospect, she clearly couldn't have been more than about 60, but she did look good. Miss Judy Shannon could get you excited about anything, whether it was what she called studying a near place or a far place. So we learned about Boston, and then we learned about Russian czars and czarinas. She could get you excited about long division or drawing your name in cursive, and she was... What I remember most about her is that she gave me tons of permission. She let me do skits, my first foray into comedy, after recess, simply because I asked. And then she said yes again and again and again. Miss Judy Shannon also gave me permission or invitations, even that I didn't notice until looking back in retrospect. There was a boy in our class who looked a little bit different and spoke a little bit different, and I could have easily slipped into a kind of complacent laughter behind his back with many other kids in the class, but Miss Judy Shannon assigned me to sit next to him, an invitation to be kind. And in her example and her exuberant joy, I still feel an invitation to be joyful, to be kind.
Like Kit, I've been lucky to have tons of really great teachers, but the person who kept coming up for me when Phil invited us to think about favorite teachers was Mrs. Kapinski. And I can just picture her. It's been a long time now. She was our 10th and 11th grade language arts special reading teacher, and she was remarkable in lots of ways, but I think the thing that makes me think of her right now in the summer is remembering how she loved reading so much. And it wasn't like she instilled that love of reading in me. I mean, that I got from reading with my mom, from, as soon as I was born, I'm sure. But Mrs. Kapinski loved reading so much, and she was so excited whenever she saw any of us reading. It didn't matter what we were reading. So she was equally, universally exuberant about whether someone came into class reading a comic book, reading Catcher in the Rye, reading the Bible, reading, a newspaper, reading a cereal box. I mean, whatever it was that was drawing your attention to the written word, she was excited about. And she was also a person who had zero concern about whether or not she was cool. And so, when you're in 10th and 11th grade, at least for me, there was a lot of preoccupation about whether or not you're cool. And so to meet this person who was so clearly cool, because she had no lack of concern about that, was just instilled in my brain, and particularly around words. Like, she just was so infectious in her excitement that it gave me permission, it was a lot of permission, for me to be the reading geek that I was. Full on, full force, whatever I happened to be reading, it just gave so much permission for that, which has been just a source of joy and strength in my life. And particularly, also, she was the person who really helped me to bring that to poetry in a way that was really not cool when you're in junior high and high school, at least in my school. But she saw that in me and nurtured that in me and encouraged my own sad attempts at poetry and introduced me to a ton of poets. And so I'm so grateful for her, for how much she loved reading, that she had no judgment about what was good to read, what was worth reading, but like just reading in general, and particularly the way that language can work in a magical way in poetry. So I'm just grateful for her today.
One of my favorite teachers was also my third grade teacher. Geneva Burt taught third grade at Elm Heights Elementary School, which was just a few blocks from where I lived. And she would have been a relatively young teacher when I had her, I think. And this would have been in the early 60s. And she had created what later would probably be called an open classroom. It's an incredibly creative teacher, and also an artist herself, and an encourager of artistic projects. It seemed like there was always something creative going on in her classroom. And that was one of the first places where I started to realize how much fun that was for me to play in that way. But there are other parts of it that, where we were allowed to kind of move at our own pace educationally, which was also a really helpful sort of thing for me at that particular time in my life. So I just remember that classroom being lively and fun and not too strict and structured, but full of possibilities for how kids could learn. And that all of the different ways of learning were important. I remember at one point during the year, we incubated chicken eggs and hatched chickens. And I don't think this happened the year that I had her, but she would often have a lamb in her classroom, a lamb in a diaper, of course. And she was a great believer in children having those kinds of direct hands-on experiences. I remember the eggs, we had to turn them in the incubator, every now and again, and there was an arrow on one side, and we had to remember whether the arrow was supposed to be up or down. When I was an undergraduate, I was doing a special project in education and creativity, and Geneva was still teaching at a different elementary school, and I actually went back and spent a semester serving as an informal student teacher with her. So that was interesting as perhaps a junior or senior in college, to go back and spend another a few months with her and to see how she was teaching at that point, and to reflect on what that had meant for me. Looking back on it, I can realize that was my first kind of intersecting between art and education, which is a theme that's played out throughout my life. And was actually able to tell her that sometime later, because she ended up living at the same retirement community where my mom lived. So as recently as a year or two ago, I have seen her, and I would see her on occasion when I was visiting in Bloomington. So interesting to have this woman who was such an inspiration to me, who opened up a lot of possibilities for me in terms of what could be done in a classroom and the various ways that she encouraged my own art and education, and that continued well beyond third grade. I hope you'll be able to spend some time this morning or throughout this week reflecting a little bit on this shift that we're in between the summertime and the fall, to be able to notice the deep places that you've experienced in your own summertime, however you spent your summer, to be thinking about the phase that we're moving into, and again, whether you're on an educational schedule or not, to recognize the importance of learning and education, which of course is very much a part of this church, and to celebrate this time of transition.
The God of grace and God of glory that we worship this morning has blessed us this summer. There's still 3 weeks of it left, with opportunities for rejuvenation, to spend time with family and friends in faraway places and nearby places, and time to experience God's healing, peace, and love. May that God be with us now as we share what we have received in this life to advance the many exciting missions of this blessed community that we're a part of. Will the ushers please come forward to receive today's offerings?
We'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God. Shining river, soon our pilgrimage will cease. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God, that flows by the throne of God.
God, we dedicate these tithes, offerings of treasure and food, along with our very lives to your service through the ministries of our congregation. May they serve to spread the hope and the joy and the compassion of the gospel with those in greatest need of each. And help us all to be ambassadors of love and justice in this weary, wanting world. Amen.
And as this portion of our end of summer celebration begins, and as the real fun is beginning, as one comes to the end of the other begins, may you go out into the world with a sense of peace, with a sense of curiosity, with an open heart, with an open spirit, with the knowledge that God goes with you always and evermore. Amen.